Oh yeah, just like that. That's why fishing a buzzbait is freaking awesome. I was changing direction right at the boat, and that joker smashed it. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's video where we're at a place that has become my son's favorite new fishing spot. I've filmed here a few times, but he has actually got out here and got on a really good glide bait bite, and he's in love with that. Okay, well, I am in love with the fact that it's post-spawn is gone. It's kind of moving into the summer pattern, and the buzzbait bite has been on fire. So I am going to get out here. We did an exploratory trip yesterday and got some good blow-ups, got some good hookups. And so today we're gonna go out here and try to further establish that the buzzbait bite is on. I'm gonna talk to you about some of the things that I think about when I'm buzzbait fishing that I think you should think about. And then we're gonna mix in some Cincos, we're gonna mix in some chatterbait stuff, and but I'm going to go explore the shallower section of this river lake system, and he's gonna go further south, and then we're gonna try to divide and conquer and figure out what the best pattern is for big fish. And so anyway, hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you have any questions along the way, don't wait to the end, but just drop them in the comment section. Just pause the video, drop them in the comment section. As always, I'll do the best I can to answer every question I can. And just so you know, a lot of the video ideas that I do for videos come from the questions that you guys ask in videos before that. So ask the questions and we can put together the best possible content. But anyway, here we go. Got 4 foot of water right up against the bank. So sometimes what you want to do is get out away from the bank, especially with what we got going on right now, which is we have the shad spawn going on. So those bigger fish will be hanging out a little bit, waiting on those shad to school up on the bank, and then they'll rush up there and bust them. So it doesn't hurt to throw out a little bit from the bank. Oh, there he is, right out of the gate. And man, I don't care who you are, if you don't get excited about a buzzbait bite like that, you should probably take up something else. Thanks, buddy. Ooh. Okay, I'm trying to help you get it out. Trying to help you get it out. As you can see, he really wanted that thing. We're gonna get a quick measurement. Get this guy back in the water. So guys, I'm not sure if you can see it up in front of me right here, but that gap in the trees is an old road. And obviously sometimes you can see it on maps, and a lot of times you can see it on your graph. But sometimes you can just say, oh look, there's a road that comes into the water. That means there's a road bed right here. And those road beds really hold fish. And during the shad spawn, the shad gather around that rock and gravel and those edges before they move up on the bank. So I'm sitting at 106 foot of water, and I could see the road bed. Plus I've got a lot of brim beds out here. So you kind of got the ultimate like 1-2 punch. You got the brim that have just spawned, you got the shad spawn going on, you got a road bed, and then there's a ton of bait out here in about 5 foot of water. So there's a lot of reasons for these fish to be hanging out here. So I'm gonna spend a little bit of time and see if I can't get a few fish off the edges of this road bed. And like when I can see when the road's coming into the water that it used to have a ditch on the side of it, then I know that that ditch continues out into the water as well, and that's a great place for fish to stage. So it looks like the road made a curve right here, and it'll start to go that way. And but anyway, I got fish already busting shad up on the bank, so I'm gonna fish this area for a minute before I run up where I was planning on going. So as these fish start to transition more into their summer pattern, I'm a really big fan of having some deeper water, 5+ foot nearby. And so I've got 5 foot 5 here, 5'8", kind of coming in and out of between 5 and 7. And then I like to look for grass edges and wood edges, and something that I can 45. I really am a big fan of 45ing the buzzbait instead of paralleling or perpendicularing it, because I just think it stays in the strike zone a little bit less and it's coming in at an angle. So there's that fleeting moment where they kind of got to make a decision, are they going to eat it or not. But I also like to kind of throw back to the same area sometimes, 2, 3, 4, sometimes even more than that. And you got that fish's attention. It's not a feeding time right now. It's actually a full moon is tonight. So the feeding time's up in the middle of the day. But man, if you can pique that curiosity, almost agitate that fish, you can get that blow up on the 4th, 5th cast, sometimes even more. So, and then each time you want to change angle, and then kind of pay attention to what angles are working, and then maybe lead with that, in your next target. Little subtle things, nothing major with the buzzbait. It's kind of a wind and grind. The one change up that I'm making for today is I'm using the Big Bite Baits buzzbait with the little hollow body swim bait on it, because I stuck it in with some red plastics to get a little bit of that red tinge to it, so that it sticks out in these fish that are these the shad spawn. So I want it to stick out a little bit, so I went with kind of a reddish orange dye. And then I like that flat head because it really makes it easy to get it up on the surface and keep it up on the surface. And I am using a G Loomis NRX 7-foot I'm using a I am using a G Loomis NRX. It's a 7-foot, medium heavy, fast. You probably should be using a moderate to moderate fast with a buzzbait. I kind of like to make up the difference with a faster reel and just good fish management. If you lose a lot of them, then you probably want to drop down to a moderate fast. Sometimes that'll help with the hookup, and it'll also help with those fish if they run at the boat or if they jump, not being able to throw slack in your line and get off. And so I am going to say right now, do what you choose. I think that the vast majority of anglers probably lean more towards a moderate to moderate fast. I just like the feel of an extra fast, and I know that I'm going to have to stay on those fish. Otherwise I run the risk of losing them, but I'll trade that for the precision and the feel all day long. Just keep that in mind when you're selecting the rod, reel, lure, and line. And then sometimes if I'm making longer casts, I'll go to a longer 7.2, 7.4 rod to cover more water. But I firmly believe in a scenario like this, where you're pot shot in the bank, that your shorter casts and your accurate casts are more important. Because if you cast way out there and you hook a fish, you're actually going to spook every fish between you and it, so you can get a little bit better numbers sometimes, and not spook those bigger fish by making these shorter accurate casts and not casting as far as you possibly can. It's like for right now, if I cast all the way down there to that overhanging tree and I hook a fish blows up on it with in the first few feet, then I'm gonna spook every fish between me and it. Doesn't mean I don't do it sometimes, but just something you got to think about. Starting to see these fish flicker up on the bank and putting that lure right up in there sometimes, up against the bank, and sometimes I'll even throw it up on the bank and pull it off. Step into that pocket, and I'm gonna parallel and get both of them. Oh, come on, fish. I'm gonna make me a little short jab cast right here. Bring it down there again. Can't believe there wasn't a fish on that. Seeing brim beds pretty much all down these banks right where they should be, out in 4 or 5 foot of water. And I know that these big fish will stage just off of these brim beds and murder those brim when they move up to spawn. But we're kind of coming off the backside of that, and right now they switched their focus to this shad spawn. We're on the tapering end of the shad spawn. I think it's only kind of lasted as long as it is because we're coming up on the full moon, so that's kind of helped extend it a little bit. We're in 80-degree water temperature, but they're still doing it, and the fish will still respond to it. It looks like as I get back out here on this point, a little closer to the main river channel, there's a lot more activity. So again, those are things you also have to pay attention to. Do you go in every cove and do what I just did, fish the whole thing out and not get a bite, or do you focus on kind of going point to point or hump to hump, or things where it makes more sense. So if I get bit out here, I'm not wasting my time until later on to even bother going up in those coves, because those fish haven't moved up in there yet. They're out on the outside. All right, guys, so I'm going to give you 2 buzzbait tips that I think are critical when it comes to buzzbait success. Actually, 3. I'm going to give it 3. On your cast, you want to feather that buzzbait, and kind of as it's coming down, you want to land it running. So what I mean by that is you want to make a long cast, and as that bait is coming to the water, you want to feather it with your thumb and then be raising your rod tip as it hits, so that when it lands, it's coming back at you. That gets your bait up on the water, up on the surface, and running a lot faster, because like I said, it's coming in for a landing, and then when it hits, it's already moving in the other direction. And with these flatter, wider heads and the bigger hollow body, it gives it a little bit more surface area, which gives it a bit more lift, and it gets it up on the surface quicker. So when you make your cast, you want to feather it and be raising it, and then get on the reel. The second tip is you want to have your rod tip either up or off to the side, meaning you want the angle between the tip of your rod and your line to be open, or be like that. You don't want it to be straight in line. And when I say that, if you make a cast and you start reeling your bait, you're not getting any lift. And if you're pointing your rod directly at your bait like I am here, if the fish blows up on it, there's no slack for it to be able to take it down, and you're still moving it forward, and so you're gonna have a lot lower hookup ratio. So what you want to do is have it either off to the side like this, to where now when it blows up, you got slack to give it and then reel back and stick it, or you want to have it up where there's a natural slack in your line. What I like about both of those is when you have it up, it kind of raises the nose of the buzzbait and makes the blades dig in a little deeper, and it makes it to where it gurgles a little bit more, and it gives the bait a little bit more action. Okay, so basically when you raise your rod tip and you kick that bait up, now that bait is digging in, gurgling more. So if I want to fish it slower, I'll make a long cast like so, feather the landing and hold my rod tip up so I can fish it really slow, and I can kind of gurgle it along, and I can hop it over the top of stuff. So that's one really effective presentation, because I know when I started this video, a lot of you are like, how many tips can you actually give on a buzzbait? You just kind of throw it out and wind it in, which is true and not true at the same time. Now when I want to fish it faster, then I like to do a sidearm. And so what I mean by that is I'll usually make a long cast, I'll use my rod tip to get it up on the surface and running, then I'll put my arm off to the side like this, and then I can reel it faster, because that bait is not, oh, like that. Oh, like just like that, that bait, oh man. I was talking instead of fishing it, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. I was fishing it a little faster, which means those fish are gonna attack it a lot more aggressively. And honestly, we could demonstrate 2 things right here. 1, I didn't give it a break. 2, I showed you that if you keep retrieving it, the fish will come back and hit it again. And more importantly, you need to do that give back, reel down and stick them, just like you do with a frog. But with the sidearm presentation, what I noticed on one of my other fish is that it came up and popped it. If they're coming up and popping it straight up and knocking it up in the air, you're fishing too slow. So that was the 3rd tip. And when I went to the sidearm there, I actually got a much more violent blow up, because it's moving faster, so it's not staying in the strike zone as long, and it makes them a lot more aggressive. And then a lot of times what they'll do is they'll come up behind it and hit it instead of coming up from under it and blowing up on it, because if it's going really slow, they think it's crippled. They're going to come up and knock it up in the air and then look around and wait to catch it, where if it's moving really fast, they know that they need to attack that thing and kill it. So if you're getting a lot of short strikes, or what I call pops, where they pop it up in the air, put your rod off to the side, speed up your presentation, and you'll get a lot more blow-ups, you'll get a lot more hookups, and you'll get a lot more success. So there's my 3 tips on fishing a buzzbait. You know, the other mistake that I made on that fish that I just lost when I was doing the demonstration, and I should have been talking about it during the demonstration, is that I was reeling directly at the boat from the nose. And so one thing you want to keep in mind, and I've talked about this in the past, is that especially if you're easing along with your motor, if your boat's moving, or if you're throwing a moving bait that's kind of pulling you a little bit, you don't want to be directly off the nose. You want to be off to the side. So just like I make those 45 presentations, you also don't want to have your presentation directly in line with your boat, because when the fish blows up and you set the hook, the boat is designed to be the most efficient, you know, in that range right there. And so it's going to go at the fish as the fish is coming at you. And then look at that guy just came along and slurped it. And so when you throw your buzz bait, you always want it to be off to one side or the other. So even if you've got to wait a second to make your cast, to kind of get your nose to come to the side, you don't want your bait in line with your nose. We have a tendency to do it as content creators because we want to try to get the blow up, you know, in the frame. But I've kind of got my camera set up where I can catch it off to the side a little better. And yeah, so just felt like that was one more thing I should point out, is you really don't want to be doing any moving bait presentation for that matter, but especially one that you're fishing fast like a buzz bait, directly off of your nose, because when that fish hits it and it's coming at you and you're going at it, it just puts the advantage back at the fish, especially again, since I'm fishing a little faster rod. I got to really make sure I'm thinking about those things, and you should too. All right, so what just happened is another reason that there's a tip that I should be sharing with you, which is that when you're making your retrieve, when you get close to the boat, you should always get a little bit of a direction change and kind of sweep the bait off to the side, because right there I just cost myself a fish because I was in a hurry. I was already looking at the next target. So always do a direction change right at the boat. Not as quite as aggressive as like the musky fisherman doing the big figure eight, but if you'll just slow your retrieve down, put your thumb on the spool and just kind of turn it and do like a wide sweep, a lot of times you'll get that blow up right at that direction change. So one more tip that I forgot to talk about. So there you go. So the way that works is you just get your line in, leave about 2-3 feet out, and just make that direction change right at the boat. A lot of times I'll even start to set up for it. As I get close, I'll raise my rod tip up and then I'll just turn, kind of sweep it down the side of the boat. Just like that. And man, you want to talk about exciting. It's even more exciting when they blow up on that direction change, when you're one-handed, short line, and it's and then when they're like 7-8 pounds, yeah, it's like fighting a gorilla in a phone booth. All right, guys, so I'm going to show you something right here by taking my phone out and recording my screen to show you one of the places where buzz baits work really well. And that is when you're looking at structure scan and you see all this wood out here on side scan, all that wood is also target. So even though I'm in here and I'm kind of looking over there at the bank, right out here, you know, if you're looking at my graph, I got wood everywhere. So you want to make some random cast out to some of that submerged wood, because fish will be staging on that stuff big time. And there's nothing for them to come up out of 3-4 foot of water to blow up on a top water. So again, I'm running 30 foot on my side scan right now, where I'm going to show those targets that are practical for me to cast to. I'm not worried about marking stuff for later. I'm really just looking to have, you know, feedback on what's going on around me, so I know where to make some extra casts. And a lot of times that's where your bigger fish are hanging out, on that outside cover, you know, that's out there in 3-4 foot of water. Decisions. So you know how you see all the posts and ads about hands-free fishing when it comes to a pedal drive? But then even while the post is going on, it shows the person constantly reaching down and adjusting their rudder handle. Well, if you want to talk about hands-free fishing, a good motor on a good kayak like the Bonafide PWR 129 and steering with your feet, that truly is hands-free fishing. I've got the motor set on 3 watts, barely creeping along, covering water, making casts. If I need to stop it, I just reach down and hit it, or I just knock the cord off, fight my fish, set it back to 3 watts, and go. And so for me, this is the true hands-free fishing. Whereas, you know, if you're constantly reaching down to adjust a rudder handle, that's not hands-free. You're literally, it might be hand-free fishing because you got one hand free, but it's definitely not hands-free fishing, even though that's what the marketing says. Hey y'all, listen, North Alabama really is a place where fishing dreams come true. From top-notch guides to diverse fisheries to breathtaking scenery, head down to North Alabama where you can reel in the adventure of a lifetime.
And they're good. Discover unparalleled access to pristine waters loaded with everything from crappie to catfish to bass. So whether you're looking to load your cooler or catch a trophy, plan your next adventure by heading over to NorthAlabama.org.